In this video we're going to have a look at version 2 of the PanelPilotACE Design Studio software, which was recently put live on the PanelPilot.com website. So anyone who is using the previous version, we'd recommend that you upgrade soon. There's no charge, it's free to use as with the previous version, and we've added a number of new features for you to use within your projects. So if you visit the download section of panelpilot.com, you can see here's the button to begin the download. Rather than going through that during this video, I will jump straight to the software. You'll notice the getting started page hasn't changed at all yet. In fact, the first thing you'll notice that has changed is that we've added a number of new templates. So templates was something that a lot of people came back to us and said that they found them really useful, even though we only had a handful of them at the beginning of when we launched the original software. So we've added, we've more than doubled the number of templates that we have, and we find that these are useful for people who are not familiar with the software or would like to get started, and they can form good building blocks or foundations for a project, so you can discard the bits that you don't need or add extra things over and above what we've already got there. So just to talk you through the new features, I'm going to open up this power meter template that we have. So one of the headline functions that we've added is a mass builder. This allows us to make calculations within the software. In this instance, it's a fairly simple one. What we're doing is calculating or multiplying the two analog inputs that we have coming in to create a power reading. So you can see up here in the top right hand corner, as with all of our functions in the software, you don't need to write any code. All of the creation of this expression is through drop downs. So you can see here, if I select one of them, in this case this is the voltage input. You can see we select that down here from this drop down. So we choose the voltage display, and then we choose the property of that voltage display that we want to use. In most cases, and in this case, it's the scaled analog input value that we want to use. We've got a multiplication, and there's various other operators that we have here available for you to use. I've just cleared that one. And then the second part of the expression, of course, is to put the current display and the scaled analog voltage. So that opens up a whole load of power to people who are using multiple inputs, or even just looking to increment or decrement numbers within their projects. So this brings us on to the properties builder, the properties trigger. This used to be called the hardware trigger in the previous version of the software, and a lot of the functionality of it is very similar. However, we've added some extra options for you to be able to effectively make it a more powerful tool. So I'm just going to go down here and select one of the ones that we've already created. Now, in this instance, the property trigger is working as a hardware trigger, and the way that the hardware trigger works, or worked, is that it would look at an analog or a digital input, and if any change occurred on that input, it would trigger an action. Now, with the properties trigger, it's fairly similar. The key difference is that rather than restricting you to only looking at hardware elements, we now are able to look at any property within a project. So for example, we could change this from in this instance it's an analog input. We could change that to a touchscreen button that we've got set up, and that would then trigger an action to happen whenever that button was pressed. The other thing that's changed since the original hardware trigger is that you're able to now schedule more than one action. So we can keep adding more actions, which will run sequentially after the trigger is triggered. The next thing I want to talk about is the logic builder. Now this has the same name as it did previously. However, again, it's had some extra functionality added to it. And the main difference between this and the previous version is you can now create multiple statements within one logic builder. Now, in the previous version, you could only create one statement, so in coding term it was an if statement. With the new logic builder, it's now an if-else statement, so it allows you to check for a number of different expressions and run a particular action as you come across the first of those which is true. So it will run through them, and you can see down here at the bottom there's a default action for if none of the statements are true. It will run a kind of de facto default action. A number of other library elements that we've added. I'm not going to go into RS-232 today. This is something, there is now a how-to guide up on the website for that. So if it's something that you're looking to make use of, the serial interfacing element, have a look at that guide. My colleague is also working on a video at the moment, which will probably be a series of tutorials, which will include the RS-232 functionality. I will just touch on a couple of these new library elements. A number of graphic effects allow you to blur or colorize or create a drop shadow on different graphical elements. And the other thing to note is that we've also added a number of new meter styles. So I'm just going to clear this screen and get a new one, and I'll show you some of the new default meters that we have. So you can see down here on the left hand side, if you hover over any of these, it gives you a little preview. Double click and that will add that to your project. So as I say, we've created probably another half dozen of these to use, and it's fairly simple to build up a application just using a number of these building blocks. I'm just going to put the tank with display on, and so you can see, we'll go onto the emulator now, and you can see we've got that bar meter down at the bottom working. You can see the battery meter at the top and the tank meter working there. So you can adapt those for your projects depending on how you're looking to use them. A couple of other things just to touch on. We've variables in the previous version of the software. There's now an extra option on them to make them persistent, and this means that they're saved to non-volatile memory even during a power out or a reset of the display. So it's worth noting that just allows you to remember settings or variables over a period of time. If you've got any questions, obviously any features that you would like to see, any comments, please put them in the comments section of this video. We welcome all the feedback we can get. As I say, keep an eye out over the next week or so. There'll be some tutorial videos going up, one showing a lot of these features built into a tare meter, and we'll probably use that same project to show and demonstrate how to use the serial functionality.